And welcome in to Poke the Bear, episode 379, part of the CLNS network. If you have time, please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel, where you have pretty much daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat with Evan Marinofsky, Pucks with Hags. We have you covered every step of the way this hockey season. The show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, the best way to win cash this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 on lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 on lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. My name is Conor Ryan. And once again, we are joined by the esteemed, the ever knowledgeable, Ty Anderson of 98.5 The Sports Hub. Ty, how you doing?
What's going on? I have to be unprofessional for a second, and I usually open my drink before we go live, but we're going live, so I got to do it now. So I gotta feel like Stone Cold here.
You can do whatever the hell you want to. This is live. We don't even have to talk about the Bruins. We can talk about like cranberry sauce. We can talk about stuffing. We can talk about the Patriots.
It's great out of a can. People who don't like it out of a can, like, come on, man. Out of a can is great. I did see a very funny thing that said like ribs for her pleasure. It was the out of a can. I was like, that's amazing.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with anything. Like if you talk about like people want to do like the actual go the extra mile for the Thanksgiving, all that stuff. No, out of the can, it's perfect. Same with like, the veggies, you microwave the stuff. It's perfect. Whatever you need. You don't have to get too snooty when it comes to this stuff.
No, I mean, it's food. It's a day off. It's everything you want all in one. So who cares what it is? At the end of the day, like I'm not a big turkey guy. Like when I was growing up, man, like I'd go to my grandmother's house. My grandmother would make lasagna on Thanksgiving. I was like, yo, I'm in on lasagna on Thanksgiving.
I mean, there's like purists, dude, who think that you shouldn't have like mac and cheese or something like that. Like, you should have whatever the hell you want, dude. You want to like order Chinese food from the Kowloon, like be my guest, like mix that in with the turkey. Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be. You don't have to adhere to what the
pilgrims did. That one year. I think one year we did that. I want to say we did. I don't know though.
And you know what? I bet it was electric. I bet it was great.
Always is. Always is.
Yes. Anyway, Ty, we could keep on talking about Thanksgiving. Maybe we'll go back to this later on, but we do have some Bruins to talk about. Obviously, recording here live on Sunday, so more to come later on tonight once the Bruins play the Sharks. But I figure this is a good time to recap that win over the Kings on Friday night. Bruins win 2-1 overtime. Morgan Geekie scores both goals. What was kind of your main takeaway from that game? Another game where the Bruins show a lot of resolve, and what has been a recurring theme this year, Morgan Geekie is, as the kids say, him.
Yeah, he's been, I mean, at a certain point now, like it's not just a hot run. We're approaching a calendar year now. And I think when you have to consider that and you look at how well he's played and you look at the ways that he can score goals, like it's not the same, right? Like he gets 2 deflection goals against the Ducks on or not 2, but he gets a deflection goal, he gets a net from power play goal against the Ducks on Wednesday. He has 2 absolute rockets on Saturday or Friday rather. Like it hits a point where it's like, this is not a hot run. This is not just shooting luck. He might just be this guy. I mean, he can score from all over, like he can score from distance. He can score from in tight. He can deflect pucks. Like he can play left and right side. He hammers the puck. He's got the hardest shot in the league right now. Like at a certain point you just go, oh, maybe he's this guy. And yeah, it'll probably dip from 27%, but like, is it going to dip to 9%? I don't know, because the way he plays is so versatile and unique that I have a hard time imagining he's going to completely crater. And it looks like the Bruins have struck gold here. Like it's funny, right? We always talk about teams that, like Zach Hyman, right? In Edmonton becomes this guy and you're like, how the hell did this happen? This guy was a Florida Panthers pick, bounced around, blah, blah, blah. Like, sometimes situations and opportunities are just what a person needs. And I think that's what's happening here with Geekie in Boston.
Yeah. And I think you look at what you said before, Ty, when you look at the way the Bruins are, have to do this rebuild, retool, what they got to do to, found money, right? Like you got to find these guys that you find that are part of another team like Seattle. I know we've had a few comments like that where you see where he was with Seattle, barely playing like 10 minutes a night, to then a guy that, to your point, maybe he's not a 50 goal scorer. Maybe he's like the equivalent of like your Carter Verhaeghe, right? Where he's going to be like a 25 30 guy, you can pencil him in for that, right? Like, and I do think you look at what this team needs to do to, come out the other side of this rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it. It's finding guys like Geekie, right? It's finding guys that are part of the equation. I think there's a couple of guys that have shown that over the stretch, right? Like, yeah, you've got the Pasternaks, the McAvoys, the Swaymans, those types of guys, but like Nikita Zadorov feels like he's part of that equation now. Morgan Geekie is definitely part of that equation, especially with that contract. Maybe Zaka, right? Like, depends on what you want to do with him later on this year. Fraser Minton, it does feel like it's definitely not a finished product by any means, but you're starting to see like parts of this lineup that maybe a year ago you looked at the depth chart and you're like, oh man, they got a lot of work to do. You're starting to see some of those spots get filled in. And I think Geekie's a guy that where he was in Seattle to where he is now, like that's how a team retools ahead of schedule, right? Is when you find these kind of guys that go from, again, maybe he's not a 50 goal guy. He's a 25, 30 goal, top six stalwart. And that's what you need.
Yeah. And the other part of that equation too is like, I don't care that he's playing with Pastrnak because I never looked at, Chris Kunitz or Brian Rust or whoever in Pittsburgh being like, oh, they play with Crosby. That's why they're good. It's like, I don't care. If you score goals, you score goals, right? And I've said the story before, I think on here or elsewhere on the air on 98.5, like when the Bruins signed Geekie, like I admit I was one of those people who was like, $2 million for this guy who's a fourth liner in Seattle. And I remember people in the organization telling me like, no, like trust us. Like he just needs minutes. He needs minutes. He's a good player. He can score more. We just got to put him in a second line role, third line role, and he's going to start scoring goals. So hats off. They were correct. They were completely right. And then that's when you kind of dug in a little bit. You dug in on the numbers. And I think we talked about it when, we just talk all the time, but like, I think when they signed him, I think we pulled up his numbers and we're like, wait, he has like 2.5 points per 60. Like this guy might be pretty decent. Like it was kind of funny, but like the Bruins saw it all along. They said, no, he just needs minutes. And sure enough, they were right. Much like Verhaeghe, much like Marchessault, like those guys, like sometimes you just need minutes and opportunity to be the player that you were always going to be.
Yeah. It's even like you look at like Bill Carlson, right? And like with Vegas, where I mean, I feel like he was also one where even his numbers like spiked like crazy. But again, one of those guys that how much it just changes not the entire complexion of your team, but how much of a lift it is when like you instead of spending years agonizing over like a top six forward. How many years did the Bruins spend in vain trying to find like a winger for David Krejci, right? And it's like, all right, how about this guy who came from Seattle who like again, to what your point was, if he comes here and we're like, maybe he's like a 35, 40 point third line guy. There's a lot of value in that. I like the cut of this guy's jib. We didn't expect he was going to be a 40 goal guy, right?
No.
And so like how much it just completely changes, the Bruins' priorities and what they need to do. And the fact that also you look at that contract and I think you tweeted out during the game against the Kings where the Bruins for years had arguably the best contract in the league with Brad Marchand. Do they have the new next one with Morgan Geekie? Because, I mean, hell, even if he is just a 25, 30 goal guy for $5.5 million for the next 6 years, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's tremendous value. And I think, if he were, let's say on a 3-year contract with Boston the first time around and this was the contract year, he'd make 7.5. He'd make 7.5 or 8 probably, and so you're probably saving $2 million at least on the sticker price that you would if this were happening, last year. And so I think it is a tremendous contract. It's great. It's great value for them. And it again, it's so hard to imagine him completely cratering out of the gate here or from here rather, because he's been so hot. And this was the biggest thing he had to fix. He was so bad up until or prior to Thanksgiving in both of his seasons here, prior to this one, like he's figured out the one thing that he's got to do almost to be a more consistent player. So now he's done that. And so you hope he can continue to be this good for the entire season, but he's already built up a hell of a start where you can afford a little bit of a dip here. But what I loved, Conor, is that he produces without Pastrnak on Friday. The first goal is without Pastrnak. It's Steve's. It's Hustadinov. I think Zadorov actually got the second assist on the first goal, but like he pulled him away from Pastrnak, right? And so like there's that part of the equation that's kind of clanging around in the head. It's like, okay, is he good because of Pastrnak? But both of his seasons prior to this one, he got healthy scratched a year ago before Thanksgiving. And the year before that, it was another slow start. I think it was like 2 goals or 3 goals in his first 15 or 16 games. So he's corrected the biggest thing that was holding him back, as a Boston Bruin.
Yeah, no, and it's just been a complete game changer for this team. And again, I think whether it's now that he's doing without Pastrnak, it's almost like, and he's been pretty candid about like the confidence that brews from, a stretch like this where all of a sudden maybe a year, 2 years ago, he's like, nah, I'm not going to take that shot. Now he's just going to let it rip. And when you got a shot like that, I think you're just seeing that positive snowball effect. I want to shout out to all of our viewers who are checking in, sending comments, flying to St. Lucia from Canada. Not bad. Let's see what other comments we got here. We have a few about Nikita Zadorov, who I want to say had another great game, I think, against the Kings. And, I mean, he's been great, I think, the whole year. I think he's been great since, like, February of last year, as far as when you look at just how many penalties he was taken at the start of his first year, I think trying to find his footing, which I think you can make the case a lot of the Bruins are trying to do that. It feels like he's a guy that, to what I was saying earlier, you look at a guy like Geekie that's part of this equation. Zadorov feels like that type of player, and he's playing really, really impactful hockey, I think, for, I don't know, pretty much a couple of months now.
Yeah, I think once he got the penalties sorted out the first 2 months of the year, I think he's been great. I mean, he was I know plus minus can be a flawed stat. I understand that. He was a plus 25 on a team that was like a minus 50 last year, like, or minus 25. Like, so he was 50 goals better than the rest of the team, in terms of like being on the ice. I just feel like he's so smooth. He's so versatile in terms of like, you need him to shut down. Okay, he can do that. You need him to spark a rush. Okay, he can do that. Like, he's a very underrated transitional player, in my opinion. And so I'm a huge Nikita Zadorov guy. You remember in the summer, I was saying I kind of want a Zadorov McAvoy top pairing. That's kind of what I wanted to see. And it has been good. And I think Zadorov has been good without McAvoy. Since McAvoy has gone down, I think Zadorov has been good. I thought he was one of their bright spots in Anaheim. I thought he had a good game in Anaheim. And so,
like 7 shots on goal. He's a monster.
Yeah, he was moving, man. Like, he realizes, like, I can't beat Charlie McAvoy, but I can try to replicate some of what he does, right? And I thought he was excellent in that game, despite the losing effort. So I'm a big Zadorov guy, and he's a player who, I remember watching that Vancouver playoff run with his final year there, and I was like, damn, I was like, this guy's intriguing, right? Like, did I love them not getting a forward, or a winger that offseason? No, but Zadorov was one of those guys that I think if you make the playoffs, you're going to like him even more. I think that's how I feel about Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah. And obviously, I think we've got a lot of comments on it. Where do you kind of stand as far as captaincy, that sort of thing? Do you feel like he's more of like, could be like a really impactful, like A down the road or something? Because I think you do like I still feel like it's probably Pasternak's to lose. I would probably say that's the boat I'm in, but that's not to like, again, discredit even like what it was years ago when it was, obviously Bergeron and those guys. He still had a lot of guys that didn't have an A, like a Coyle or a Carlo or any of those guys that still carried a lot of weight. I think Nikita Zadorov is very different from, let's say, a guy like Carlo or Coyle. He's much more of a cage rattler, but I think just having that guy in the room as kind of that next tier, whether that ends up being an A or just the guy that can step to when needed, I think you can see where that value is. So, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss, where he's kind of calling guys out. I think you kind of need one of those guys in the room, and it feels like they've taken on that swagger, that accountability, and he kind of brings that regardless of what the results are out there.
Yeah, I think he's more A than C. If that's
not a very nice comment, NL writer.
No, but like I think that he's one of these guys that like doesn't need to wear a letter to lead, if that makes sense, right? Like I think that you've seen that he takes pride in wearing the letter, but he doesn't need to be the captain to rattle the cages, right? He doesn't need to be to wear an A to tell the team to wake the hell up if they got to wake up. And I think that, he's a great soldier, right? He doesn't have to be the general, but he can be the guy that leads you into battle, right? Like I feel like Marchand, I feel like putting the C on him made it too heavy for him, where he couldn't be the full Marchand because he had to be the captain too. You know, like I think that with guys that have that P and V, that attitude, that, you know, whatever you want to call it, like I'm a little reluctant of giving them the captaincy, if only because I don't know if like that's gonna bring the best out of their game. Like I want the full package there with Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah.
Does giving him the C make him not, you know, as much of a prick to the opponent? I'd be worried about that. But I think it's a great alternate. Like honestly, like there was a game a few weeks ago where he wasn't wearing a letter, and it was Elias Lindholm wearing it, and somebody mentioned like Nikita should be like he should get a letter, and I said he should be wearing one right now. Like I feel like if McAvoy, Pastrnak, or Hampus Lindholm go down, I feel like Zadorov should be the first guy wearing a letter, not the fifth, you know, or not the second rather, behind Elias Lindholm.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think it's been impressive to see like how he's bounced back from that start to last year, and how he again feels like he's part of one of those key cogs moving forward. We're going to talk a little bit more about this Bruins team, talk a little bit about injuries. I've seen a few comments talking about the state of this team. Team is still banged up going into this game on Sunday against San Jose. But before we do that, Ty, we're going to take a quick break, listen to our good friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with PrizePicks. The weather might be changing, but the feelings of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. There's plenty of new faces in New England, but it looks like names like Milton Williams, Stephon Diggs, and Travion Henderson are heating up as we get into some colder weather. And if you want to make your pick on which player is about to go off on the gridiron, you have to go with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Josh Allen's passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns? Hopefully not Houston Texans sacks. You can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on PrizePicks. You can follow other PrizePicks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on PrizePicks. And it's not just football. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite football players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. There's no shortage of ways to participate in PrizePicks. This week, I'm looking at the board. I'm going to cover all my bases. I've got Jaylen Brown for more than 4.5 3-pointers, and I'm all in on Drake May against Cincinnati later today, taking the QB for more than 300 passing yards in Week 12 against the Bengals. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on the PrizePicks app to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Shout out once again to our good friends over at PrizePicks. All right, Ty, looking at the state of this team, we have a few comments about any updates on Charlie McAvoy. No updates other than he's going to miss a good amount of time, I would say. I think that one's pretty evident.
Yeah, I can tell you based on a source that I was talking to the other day, going to be a while. That is sort of the overall read. Now, he could try to buck the trends, you know, like Kirill Marchenko took a puck off the jaw and broke a jaw a year ago. He ended up missing 3 games. Now, he was aided by the 4 Nations break, but from surgery to returning to the lineup was about 18 days. Not every break is the same, though, and some breaks require more procedural sort of know-how there. I've been told that he did have a plate put in his jaw. I've been told that by multiple people now. So it's a pretty extensive or invasive operation there. So it's going to be a while. I would imagine it might be something closer to, you know, I wrote about this on the website. Sidney Crosby took a puck in the jaw from Brooks Orpik in 2013. Crosby ended up missing 12 games, or 13 games, 1 playoff game. And then he ended up coming back. And when he came back, he had the big, you know, the big huge apparatus cage, on his helmet. And he had that for 2 playoff rounds. So I think that was I think another 12 games or so. And then by the time they played the Bruins in the conference finals, he ditched it. He didn't need it anymore. So I think you're probably looking at something more like that. Jack Hughes, it's not Jack Hughes, sorry, Connor Bedard missed like 6 weeks when he broke his jaw. So everything is different, but the way it's been told to me so far is that going to be out a while. And you obviously hope that, he can find the internal chara to step up and play, ahead of schedule. But the vibe is a little sour around that situation right now.
Yeah, it's not great. You're still going to have to try to stay afloat there without him, which is easier said than done. As far as some positive news, Elias Lindholm's obviously on the trip with the team. Skated, I think, was a full participant on Saturday before they headed over to the Bay Area. So we'll see if he gets in the lineup tonight, or if it's on maybe Wednesday against the Islanders, with a little bit more time for him to rest and recuperate. Would make for obviously a huge lift for this team as far as, what you would get if Elias Lindholm's back in the lineup. Was playing good hockey at the start of the season, was effective on the power play. Power play has still been pretty dangerous with him out, but when you look at a guy that is winning faceoffs, a guy that can contribute, is a legitimate top 6 guy, right? It does at least give you more options. And, what would the lines be? We've had people talk about, some of the different comments here about, Husadinov with Geekie and Pastagan, Elias with Zacha and Blumel. Like, it at least opens the door for Marco Sturm to get more creative, as opposed to times here where, you saw, I think, for some of those stretches of games where it's Zacha between Blumel and Steves. You like the effort from Steves at times, but I feel like that you weren't getting a lot of traction with that group. Just having Lindholm back at least gives you more ways to tinker with that lineup. And I also think the emergence, I guess I would say, of Husadinov gives Sturm another option where he doesn't really have to bump him out of the lineup if he doesn't want to, because it feels like wherever you put him, he's going to be hounding pucks. He's going to be making an impact that he's really, I think, kind of shown his value as of late.
Yeah, I don't want to bump Husadinov down to the 4th line. I think you are at your limit right now in terms of like how many more losses you can take personnel wise. Like, I think, like, say what you will about Keith Middlestad and Victor Arvidsson and whether or not they're true second line players. They're second liners for you. Lindholm is a top liner for you. And you're down half your top 6 right now, and you're number 1 defenseman. I just feel like you're at your limit. Like, this is the amount of injuries you can withstand here. No more. You can't, like, if you take another one, now things are getting really scary for you. I think it's at the top of the roster. I think Minton is in a perfect spot right now. I want to keep him there. I think Jeannot's in a good spot for him. I want to keep him there. I don't want to have to play these guys even more than I already am. Not a knock on them, but it's like everyone's slotted into their right spot right now, with the exception of like Matej Blumel. Blumel, I think, is struggling. I think he had a rough debut against Carolina. I thought he bounced back against Anaheim, and then I thought he was rough on Friday. And so you want to give him the rope to hang, right? Because you don't want to say, like, all right, you're getting 3 games and you're going back to the minors, because that's a problem that this team has made countless times. But, I'd love to reduce his role a little bit, but the truth is you can't right now. And so this is where they are. Just they can't take another injury. But more to your question, I think Husadinov is kind of, Middlestat, as far as we know, is not skating yet, right? Arvidsson is going to be a while. They feel internally, it sounds like. And so second line, he's got to be a second liner then, I don't hate the idea of Zacha and Husadinov together. You got a speedy, tenacious forechecker of a winger with Pavel Zacha, who is always steady, right? And is always in the right spot. And that might be a good combo. That's a combo that I kind of want to explore once Lindholm does return to this lineup. That or Zacha and Geekie together. Now, I love Zacha and Geekie together because if you have a left side faceoff and you can put Zacha there, if Zacha can win it right back to Geekie and Geekie just fires it on goal, that might be it, because Geekie can beat guys from distance, as we've seen. That might be a good little sneaky weapon you can have in your arsenal as well.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And it just opens up so much more if Lindholm does get back here, and you hope he's back soon. And I think most importantly, he's looking like the same player he was before, because I think that's the one fear you have with Lindholm, is that he kind of started slow last year, had the back injury in training camp, and was kind of operating at, at his best 70%, right? You hope that he's not a guy that, these injuries can kind of linger and really sap what he can be, which is a legitimate top 6 weapon, a guy that can really, shift your momentum on a shift. So we'll see kind of what happens there.
And when he came back, he had like a borderline, like it was like almost too self-deprecating to the point where it felt like masochistic, where he's like, I'm terrible. I'm like, please stop saying that. You're a good person. You're valued. He's like, no, I'm shit. It's like, stop it. He's like, I hope I can help this team win a game, but probably not. I suck. And it's like, oh my God, stop saying that.
Yeah. The vibes weren't that great. Yeah. No one wants that. We're going to go through a few other questions we've had submitted here. There was one from this guy that I really can't stand because he always comments on here. I got to find it right now, but I appreciate all the comments we get from people because it's all they crack me up. They're always about the Bruins. They're always super informed. It's all these great things. And then there's like this guy right here, Evan Marinovsky 126, asking stupid questions like this, but how much we love Evan Marinovsky. How self-absorbed can you be, Ty, to be asked this? We're all having a very mature, informed hockey conversation here. This guy comes in, just taking us off the rails with these questions. We got all these other people asking great stuff here. Now we got to devote time to this guy, Evan.
Yeah, and then he went to a concert last night of a band called Couch. What's next, Lamp?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you can't wait for that Love Seat tour. You dude, dork.
Big Pixar guy, I think is what they say. Anyway,
yeah. Then he texted us. He texted us saying, "Are you guys actually live right now?" Yeah, we're live. Yeah, we're pros.
No, exactly. Anyway, we love you, Evan, kind of. Other questions. This one was interesting. Evan is, once again, texting us. From Cats and Rats podcast, what is the number one reason the Bruins are where they are in the standings? And we got other comments saying that Swayman is the number one reason. We'll talk a little bit about Swayman, but where do you kind of equate it to, Ty, as to why this team has kind of been such a hard out this year?
I think the goaltending definitely plays a factor. I think they've been good situationally. The numbers perhaps don't bear that out right now, but I think situationally they have been better than you would think if you just look at this team in the standings or look at the stats. I would also argue that their power play, being top 10 in the league, has been a great pressure release valve for them in terms of, you don't have it that night, 5-on-5 to struggle. Okay, power play's got to make good. And we talked about that in the offseason, that if you don't have the horses offensively 5-on-5 or the play drivers 5-on-5, then you got to have an elite power play. They have had an elite power play and an elite PK for much of the year. So that's been able to mask some of their issues, in my opinion. And so I think that's something that has helped them out in a major way. So I would say their special teams play is probably, in my opinion, the number one reason why they have been so good out of the gate, because they have been stellar on both the PK and the power play, which, I said, just be good at one of those things, right? And you'll be a better team. They're great at both.
Yeah. And that's kind of what Mark Sturm has mentioned since the summertime, right? Like, he's been very upfront and candid about, like, this team doesn't have the horses generally to be a top 10 scoring team. They've been playing like it so far, but I think as encouraging as it is, you have to anticipate and brace for that regression, right? Where not everyone's going to be, I don't think we're going to end the year with Jeannot and Asimont and Kastelik and all these guys having like 43 points, right? It'd be great that we can change our approach if that's actually going to happen. But I think you can rely on that power play to kind of keep you afloat. You've got obviously guys that can make an impact at 5-on-5 play, and Pastrnak and Geekie now, obviously. But the power play is what's going to keep you in some of these games or help you claw back in these games. And I think when you see how they've bought in under Sturm, it feels like he's kind of mapped out the template, the way this team needs to play, and they're following it. And I think also, Swayman has really kind of bounced back as of late. He had a couple of games where his goals saved above expected, which I think is almost kind of like the new barometer for goaltending, where it factors in, shot quality. It factors in what that goalie's seeing night in, night out. He's, I think, one of the tops in the league once again. He's a guy that's making those critical saves. There's been times where he's given up a goal or two where you're like, and then he goes like sicko mode in the third period, keeps you in a game, like puts you in a spot to win. And I think that's what you've seen from him. And it's, if you've got David Pastrnak is healthy, you've got a top 10 power play, and you've got a legit PK, and Swayman is playing like at the very least, a top 10 goalie. You got a good team. Like we even said it last year. If Jeremy Swayman was like league average, they probably are like in the mix for the playoffs. Like, it was just everything just went so wrong last year.
Yeah, and to further the point about the special teams, a year ago they were bottom 12 in PK and power play. They have the 6th worst power play and the 12th worst PK. Like, it's hard to win games that way if you are that bad. You know, the game is played a 5-on-5 for 45 minutes most nights, right? But those 15 minutes can make or break you. We saw it break them a lot a year ago. Think of how many back-breaking PK goals they allowed a year ago, where it's a 2-1 game, and all of a sudden, okay, now it's 3-1, and this team's not going to score 2 goals in the next 26 minutes. So to like this is sort of I think an underrated part of the game. I think especially now, like, power plays feel like they're on the rise every year. There's so many nights where a team has to go 5 for 6 on the PK or 5 for 5, and I feel like 6 years ago it was like they had to go 3 for 3 on the PK. Like power plays and PKs was on the rise because of how fast the league is now. But it's such an important thing. And yeah, since the loss in Ottawa, where he got absolutely rocked by the Senators, I think Swayman's been excellent. I think he's been so good since that loss. I think he's 6-1. The save percentage, I think, is like .925 or thereabouts. Like, so he's bounced back from an ass kicking, right? And I think this is something that I think Bruins fans like I'm never, like, I always say this, I'm never going to tell anybody how to fan. I'm never going to tell anybody what their opinions should be. I think if you're one of these guys, though, that is still clinging to last year and being mad at Swayman for last year, you got to let it go. You got to let it go. Like, we get calls on the show sometimes about like how Swayman is selfish and he's so overrated. He's not a good goalie. He's not a number 1 goaltender. And it's like, I know it's bitterness from the contract dispute. I understand all that, but like, he's been good. He's been good now for, I think he finished well in late March and in April. I thought that he had a great Worlds for Team USA, and he's been good out of the gate here. So like, I think we got to let last year go and go, okay, Swayman might be back to being the guy that he was in 24-25.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And it's a good sight for the Bruins for sure. We're going to wrap things up pretty soon here, Ty. Before we do that, again, want to give a shout out to the CLNS Media Network. Again, if you have time, please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. Daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat, Pucks with Hags. We have it covered every step of the way this hockey season. And it's not just the Bruins. If you love the Patriots, Celtics, please subscribe to all the other great CLNS Media Network channels. Patriots Press Pass, Celtics All Access. They have you covered every step of the way for those respective seasons. They do a great job with daily content, live videos after games, all that good stuff. So shout out to the CLNS Media Network, and please subscribe to all those respective channels. Ty, when you look at the rest of this team and what this team needs to do moving forward to be a successful group, looking at some of the Bruins prospects as of late, pretty good weekend, especially on Friday for a lot of players. James Hagens had 2 goals. Dean Letourneau had another goal. Chris Pelosi had a hat trick. Maybe as far as like the big picture, it does feel like this team, their prospect pipeline is coming along, I think, probably a little bit quicker than people maybe anticipated, or at least it feels like, as much as you look at the guys in Providence, right? The Lysells, the Patras, those types of players, there does seem to be a really intriguing crop of players beyond just like Hagens that are really kind of developing pretty well right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I think, the biggest one here is Dean Letourneau is looking like he's developing into a player now for BC. He scores a beautiful goal on Friday night against Maine, right off the faceoff, just absolute bar down snipe. Now he's up to 11 points through 13 games. He only had 3 points in 36 games a year ago. I just feel like that is, that's a huge development for this team, right? Like if he was putting up another year where he had like 1 point through 13 games, you're kind of going, oh no, they did it again. You know what I mean? Like they got a guy who's not even a player, let alone a first round pick, and so it's encouraging, right? Not to say he's a finished product by any stretch of the imagination, of course, but that's been my biggest development in the amateur pipeline is, holy cow, this kid might be able to play. And if that happens, that does change a lot of things for you, right? And so I think we believe in James Hagens being a good NHL player down the road. But you need support beyond that, right? You need more. You need Pelosi. I would even include Beckett Hendrickson as a guy that I want to see more of, just given his frame and his build and what he can project as. Will Zellers is scoring at UND. Like the pipeline. I said this to Adam McQuaid during dev camp. I was like, this is probably the most talented pool you've had in a long time. And he was like, yeah, he goes, not to be insulting, but yeah, this is the most natural talent they've had in the prospect pool since Don Sweeney took over. And that's encouraging. Now it's about harnessing it, developing it, furthering it along, and going from there. And so you mentioned Lysell and Poitras, like it's super interesting now because like, do the Bruins throw those guys into a trade now at a certain point? Like if Rasmus Andersson is available and the Bruins are better than we think they are, and they're in it, and they need a right shot D long term, are they now like, you know what? Like we're going to build a package and we're going to throw those guys into it. Not to say that's going to put them over the top in terms of getting that player. You know what I mean? But like, but now are those guys, are those guys more likely to be trade fodder now than they are part of your solution, given the talent you have in the amateur ranks? I think this is where their situation is fascinating to me because they're not a true rebuilder. They're not a true contender. How do you go in either direction right now? What's your next big move, right? Like, do you have another Marchand trade lined up, or do you have another Hampus Lindholm trade lined up? Like this is the next step of their whatever you want to call it, wherever they are right now, where like, I'm dying to know what they do because they got kids coming, but they also got a core that's 29, 30, 32, 28. Like, so you got to appease both masters, which is really hard to do. But the way these young players are playing right now, I think gives them either more trade capital or it gives them more willingness to trade some of their tweener prospects, that guys that are in the pros but are not in the NHL right now. So it's a really unique position for them, I think.
Yeah, it does feel like it's going to end up just being kind of a fluid situation where, I mean, if this team, we get to, February, March, and they're like 2 games over 500 and they're competitive, you want to root for them, but they don't really feel like they're moving the needle enough, then it probably is something where you have to take a long look at the assets you have, like, even if it's a Zacha or someone like that, and you again, acquire more assets and you feel like you're really in a good position for next year when some of the young talent that you've already acquired maybe is ready to push through and help out an already pretty solid core. If this team all of a sudden is, 10 games over 500 and look like they're going to be legitimately in the mix, then maybe it's like, hey, we are a little bit ahead of schedule. Like we could get these assets, but like, man, if Anderson's right there and he's going to be part of our solution, we got to do that as well. So I do feel like it is going to be, I don't think they're set in their ways yet. They're almost kind of like how they were last year, where they saw where they're at. They saw that, listen, we thought we had a competitive team. It ain't working. We got to cut bait. We got to wave the white flag. We got to fight another day. And I think that's kind of how they have to view this season, where I feel like they're in a much better spot. They like what they've seen so far. We'd probably already have a different approach to this team if they just ended up getting a few more loser points. Like how much better it would be if they were 13-7-3, right? And like how much better that record looks than 13-10. But I think it's going to depend on where they're at once we get later on in the year. If they can stay afloat, then I don't view them being a team that's going to buy for the sake of getting a rental. But if it's someone like an Anderson or like a Hampus Lindholm that you add and is part of that next wave with the Geekies and the Zachas and the Zadorovs, and that opportunity is there, that's when I think you have to strike if you're the Bruins.
Yeah, and we were talking about all these prospects and the guys in the amateur ranks. Like there's some players that were late round picks for them that are kind of blossoming. Ryan Walsh, Team USA in the Spengler Cup, it looks like.
He had 4 assists last night.
He's been great at Cornell. And then Cole Chandler in the Q has been great.
Cooper Simpson's doing well in the USHL.
Cooper Simpson's been fantastic in the USHL. There's another guy. I mean, he's been a little bit banged up this year, but he's been productive at BC. Is Andre Gassot. Like if that's a guy that can produce, like, that's bonus. Like anytime you get a player in the 5th round or later, it's like bonus. I'll take it. But it is true though that like we had a comment that came in that said like D is their top need. I think D was their top need even with McAvoy. I think even with McAvoy, to play the Sturm system, you need excellent defense, right? And I think as they are currently constructed, if you put Zadorov and McAvoy together, as good and as effective as that top pairing is, it forces Marco Sturm to have a third pairing that he's not in love with, whether that's Lohrei and Jokiharju, which is like, ooh, adventure time, or playing a lefty on the right side and Jonathan Aspero. There's always something, or playing Peak on the second pairing, who's been good in that role this year. There's always something that you're going to have to do that makes you a little squeamish if you're the head coach. And so I think getting a legit bona fide right side top four kind of guy, which they lost Brandon Carlo, which I do that trade again and again and again, because I think it's been really good for you. It is a need, though, for this team, I think, even with or without McAvoy. And I'm dying to know if they make a play for Rasmus Andersson.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where this team's at that point and what the next path is for this group. So plenty more to talk about moving forward. Ty, before we let you go, where can we hear you on the airwaves, where we can read your stuff, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can hear me every Saturday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. on 98.5 Sports Hub. It's the Stars and Shaw is the Star Market Hockey Show. That's what I was messing up. There it is. Don't worry, I only do it for a living. No big deal. That's where you can find me. You can also find my podcast here, the Sports Hub Underground, as well as 98.5sportshub.com. All the writing will be up there as well, and that's where I can be. I was like, when you asked me to do the show today, I was like, are you doing this live from Gillette? And that's when I realized they're on the road this week.
They're in Cincinnati, and thank God I do not have to go to Cincinnati. So, nope, I am.
But if you were, we could find all your stuff at the Boston Globe.
Yes, that is true. Yes, you can read my stuff over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins season. I will be boots on the ground on Wednesday, actually, at the Islanders, covering for the Globe. So I will be there as well. So I'm all over the place, essentially. But you can read my stuff. Yeah.
I thought about doing that trip, and then I thought driving back to Boston on midnight on Thanksgiving Day was probably not going to be my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I don't even like driving the Merritt Parkway anytime anyway. And especially
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Holidays. It's horrifying. People are like, oh, it's very scenic. I'm like, no, it's Mad Max Fury Road, except it's dude dressed as Jay Gatsby hitting me with his Genesis GV70. I don't want that.
Yeah, no, exactly. We don't need that.
No, not at all. But yeah, you can read my stuff over there. Again, we have these live shows every week now, pretty much, especially with our good friend Evan Marinovsky, who, yes, we can confirm, Evan, we are still live. But yeah, you can read our stuff over there. Again, before we wrap this up, I want to shout out the CLNS Media Network. Again, please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. We have you covered every step of the way. And again, this episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks, the best way to win cash this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 on lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 on lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. My name is Conor Ryan. That is Ty Anderson. This was Poke the Bear episode 379. You fans have a great rest of your week.